Welcome back to World Gone Weird, folks, where we try to make sense of,
Exactly. And today we're diving into a topic that's both fascinating and, frankly, a little unsettling. The unintended consequences of these hyper-personalized, AI-driven education apps that are popping up everywhere.
Unsettling is right. I mean, the idea of algorithms dictating what kids learn, it feels a bit dystopian, doesn't it?
It's more than a feeling, Jimmy. We're talking about the potential for creating new forms of knowledge inequality. Think about it. These algorithms are trained on data, and data reflects existing biases. So, what happens when these biases get baked into the very fabric of education?
Well, I'm not sure. Maybe it's not all doom and gloom, right? Think about the potential to cater to individual learning styles, identify gaps in knowledge, even accelerate learning for gifted students. Personalization could be a real game changer.
Oh, honey, game changer is what they said about the Segway. Remember those? Now they're just gathering dust in some rich dude's garage, probably programmed to teach his Pomeranian calculus. Seriously, though, Otto's right. There's got to be some good, in theory at least.
I don't know. Even if the intention is good, who's controlling the algorithm? What's their agenda? Are we sure it's just about education? Or is it about shaping the next generation to think a certain way?
That's a valid concern, Jimmy. The lack of transparency is troubling. These platforms are often proprietary, meaning we have no insight into how they work or what data they collect. It's a black box making critical decisions about children's futures.
Okay, I see the point. But couldn't we argue that traditional education systems also have biases? Standardized testing, for example, often favors certain socioeconomic groups. Maybe AI could actually help level the playing field.
Level the playing field? Please. It'll just create a new one where the rich kids get the super-duper personalized AI tutor that costs as much as a Tesla, and the rest of us get to learn your ABCs with Clippy the paperclip version. It's commodification of learning at its finest.
And it's not just about access to technology, Sarah's right. It's about the quality of the content. If these platforms are driven by profit, they're going to prioritize what sells, not necessarily what's educationally sound. Think about it, educational access becomes a luxury item.
So what are we talking about here? Kids are being sold a bill of goods here, with the parents unknowingly going along. Next thing you know, critical thinking skills are replaced by algorithm-approved answers.
But isn't critical thinking something that could be taught by an AI as well? Through debate simulations or, I don't know, logic puzzles.
Yeah, but who programs those puzzles? If the AI is trained to value conformity over creativity or efficiency over empathy, we're in trouble. We're creating a generation of optimized automatons, not well-rounded humans.
Exactly. We could see a future where educational access becomes a luxury. Only those who can afford the best AI tutors will have access to the most advanced knowledge and skills. This will widen the gap between the haves and have-nots, creating a permanent underclass.
That's a pretty dark scenario, I will say. So is there anything we can do to mitigate these risks? Regulation, maybe? Government oversight?
Government oversight? That's just asking for more of the same biases, only this time baked in at the bureaucratic level. Remember that time with the math curriculum fiasco? A few bad apples ruined it for everyone.
Plus, let's be honest, by the time the government figures out what's going on, the algorithms will be 3 steps ahead, writing their own regulations in binary code. What if those algorithms are written in another country that doesn't have our interests in mind?
The answer isn't simple, that's correct. But increased transparency is a must. We need to demand that these platforms disclose how their algorithms work, what data they collect, and how they ensure fairness and accuracy.
And maybe we need to think about alternative models, like open source educational AI that's developed collaboratively and subject to public scrutiny. That could help ensure that these tools are used for the benefit of all, not just a select few.
Open source? Sounds good in theory, but who's going to maintain it? Who's going to ensure it's not hijacked by some extremist group pushing their own agenda? I'm not seeing this ending well.
Maybe we need to go old school. More funding for public schools, smaller class sizes, teachers who are actually trained to teach, not just manage data. I know, radical idea, right?
That is radical, Sarah. Combining that with fostering media literacy and critical thinking skills would be a huge start. We need to equip kids to evaluate information, identify biases, and form their own opinions, regardless of what the algorithm tells them.
It's about empowering them to become lifelong learners, not just passive recipients of information, right?
Easy for you to say, coming from your ivory tower of academia. The real world is about getting a job, making a living. All this lifelong learning stuff sounds nice, but it doesn't pay the bills.
Okay. Settle down, guys. Look, the point is, we need to be aware of the potential pitfalls of these personalized education apps. They're not a magic bullet. They could be a powerful tool, but only if we use them wisely.
Wise use requires constant vigilance and a willingness to question everything. We can't just blindly trust the algorithm. We need to be critical, engaged citizens who are actively shaping the future of education.
So, yeah, be skeptical, but also be open to the possibilities. It is a new world after all.
And maybe invest in a good old-fashioned book every now and then, just in case the robots decide to rewrite history.
Speaking of books, it is important to remember what Martin Luther King Jr. said. The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education.
That's an excellent point. MLK also said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. It's a reminder that knowledge inequality, or injustice in education, anywhere in the world can have cascading effects on global progress and stability. If a significant portion of the world's population is denied access to quality education, or if their education is manipulated to serve narrow interests, it could lead to social unrest, economic stagnation, and even political instability that affects everyone.
That's assuming these educational apps are actually effective. What if they're just another fad? A shiny new distraction that ultimately leaves kids less prepared than they were before. Remember those brain training games everyone was obsessed with a few years ago? Turns out they didn't really do much.
Oh, those were a hoot. I spent a fortune trying to make my brain sharper only to realize I was just getting really good at recognizing patterns of colored squares. A highly marketable skill, I'm sure.
The concern is warranted. We should analyze and quantify what is needed. We can look at this through a scientific lens. What factors can we change or measure? The data from the war shows that even with intense focus on a single element, the system is still complex and requires multiple approaches. Think about the Battle of the Atlantic. The Allies eventually turned the tide by implementing convoys, aircraft, and technology.
That's a good analogy. It's not just about throwing technology at the problem. It's about a holistic approach that combines technology with human intelligence, ethical considerations, and a commitment to equity. And what about the teachers?
The teachers? You think they're just going to sit back and let an algorithm take their jobs? They'll be fighting this tooth and nail, and rightfully so.
Oh, I don't know. Some of them might be thrilled to hand over the grading to a robot. Imagine all the extra time they'd have for, well, whatever it is teachers do in their spare time. Plot world domination, maybe?
The role of educators cannot be diminished. Instead, it would pivot. As MLK said, true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. How can we quantifiably make that happen in all educational institutions?
Maybe the future is teachers as curators and mentors, guiding students through a sea of information and helping them develop critical thinking skills, rather than just lecturing from a textbook. It has to be more than just the tech.
Curators? Mentors? Sounds like a whole lot of fluff to me. What about the basics? Reading, writing, arithmetic? Are we just going to let the algorithm decide what's important?
Those basics are important, but are we seriously suggesting that there is only one standard for what is a valuable skill set? Maybe not everyone wants to be an accountant or a programmer. What about artists, musicians, philosophers? Are we going to program them out of existence?
It does create that potential, Sarah. When these are rolled out, there will be significant events. Take the Battle of Britain, for example. After a nearly 4-month air campaign waged over England, Britain's Royal Air Force and Navy respond to heavy bombing attacks from Germany's Luftwaffe Air Force, including the Blitz, in an attempt to destroy the RAF before invading. Defense systems, including radar, and Hitler's decision to bomb London, rather than military bases, allows Britain to regroup and eventually win the battle.
The point is, how do we measure soft skills that help round out the human being? Emotional intelligence, creativity, adaptability, all are tough to measure. What about those skills will also be valued in a rapidly changing world?
Adaptability? That's just another word for being easily manipulated. I want my kids to be strong, independent thinkers, not chameleons adapting to whatever the algorithm throws at them.
Speaking of manipulation, what about the potential for these AI tutors to be used for propaganda? Imagine a government using personalized education to indoctrinate children with its own ideology. Scary, right?
The answer isn't scary, but we do need to find a solution. One that doesn't cause fear, but builds society. MLK said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that."
Okay, that's a valid concern. The potential for misuse is definitely there. It's all the more reason why we need strong ethical guidelines and international cooperation to ensure that these technologies are used responsibly.
International cooperation? You think China and Russia are going to play nice and follow our ethical guidelines? Wake up, Otto. They'll be using this stuff to brainwash their own kids and gain a strategic advantage.
Maybe we should just unplug the internet and go back to reading books by candlelight. Problem solved? Or, we could try to find a middle ground between technological utopianism and dystopian paranoia.
That is a great point. We should look at this through a scientific point of view. Take the Battle of Midway, for example. In one of America's most important World War II naval wins, American intelligence is able to break codes to thwart a Japanese attack on the U.S. at Midway Island in the Pacific Ocean. The code breaking gave the United States a strategic advantage.
The middle ground. I like that, Sarah. Maybe it's about using AI as a tool to supplement, not replace, human teachers and traditional learning methods. A tool that can help personalize learning, identify gaps in knowledge, and provide access to educational resources for those who need them most. But we can never allow this to be the primary mode.
So, what you're saying is we should use AI to create a better version of the same broken system we already have. I'm not convinced.
Well, at least it's a start. We can't just throw our hands up and say technology is evil. We need to try to harness its power for good while being mindful of the potential risks.
Exactly. We have to always use logic, analysis, and thought, but remain vigilant. As MLK said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. We must never be silent when it comes to education and our children.
Yeah, and those words from MLK tie into another crucial aspect, critical thinking and ethical awareness. We need to instill in young people the ability to question, analyze, and evaluate information from any source, including AI-driven platforms. A strong moral compass combined with sharp analytical skills can help them navigate the complexities of this new educational landscape.
A moral compass? Where are kids supposed to get that these days? From TikTok? From woke professors pushing their agendas? Good luck with that.
Hey, there are still good people out there. We just need to amplify their voices and give kids the tools to recognize them. Maybe AI could even help with that, if we program it right.
But we should be careful to not paint everything as the oppressor versus the oppressed. That is an unhealthy outlook on society. It's about equipping young people with the tools to be informed, engaged citizens who can shape a better future for themselves and their communities. And that involves a healthy dose of skepticism, a strong ethical compass, and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
Challenge the status quo? That's just code for rebel against authority. I want my kids to respect authority, not undermine it.
Respect, sure, but not blind obedience. We need to teach kids to think for themselves, to question power, and to stand up for what's right, even when it's unpopular. Otherwise, we're just raising sheep.
That is correct. The time is always right to do what is right. These are some big issues, and it's important to analyze all the data, learn about the historical context, and think critically. This is the only way to determine what is right, and then to pursue it.
Speaking of historical context, going back to WWET, the siege of Leningrad offers a chilling example of the consequences of resource scarcity and the importance of equitable distribution. It highlights how access to basic necessities, including education, can become a matter of life and death in times of crisis. It's a cautionary tale about the fragility of societal structures and the need for resilience and preparedness.
So, what are we saying? That these educational apps could lead to another siege of Leningrad? That's a bit of a stretch, don't you think?
No, but it's a reminder that even seemingly innocuous things like educational technology can have unintended consequences if we're not careful. We need to think about the bigger picture, the potential for inequality, the risk of manipulation, and the importance of fostering critical thinking and ethical awareness.
Always be prepared, always be vigilant, and always be thoughtful. To quote MLK, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Well, on that sobering note, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. It's definitely a complex issue with no easy answers, but hopefully, we've given you some food for thought. What is next?
Hopefully, we haven't scared everyone away from technology altogether. Just remember to use it wisely and maybe keep a few books on hand, just in case. And thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, stay weird.